It begins quietly, as many stories about money often do, not with the clatter of coins or the whisper of banknotes, but with the soft hiss of steam rising from a machine older in spirit than most of the people who gather around it. A coffee shop, on the surface, is a gentle place, a refuge, a pause, a warm room filled with drifting aromas that wrap around the senses long before the first sip touches the tongue. But beneath that warmth lies an intricate organism, one that hums with calculation, subtle strategy, and a delicate dance between illusion and reality. Every morning the first customer steps through the door, believing they're entering a place built for comfort. Yet what they are entering is the front stage of a quietly theatrical economy, one where every seat, every cent, every flick of the paw from a barista's wrist is part of a finely tuned system of survival. Because selling coffee by itself rarely pays the bills. And the story of how coffee shops really make money begins long before the lights flicker on at dawn. Long before the customers arrive, the space is still half asleep. Pale light creeps through the windows, settling on empty chairs arranged with the precision of a stage set. The baristas move like ghosts rehearsing a ritual, grinding, calibrating, flushing, tasting. Each action is part of a choreography inherited from decades of trial, error, and the relentless need to squeeze value from a substance that costs pennies but must be sold as a moment, an escape, a feeling worth far more than its ingredients. For centuries, coffee was the drink of merchants and thinkers, its presence intertwined with revolutions and ideas. But the modern coffee shop, this polished hybrid of comfort and commerce, evolved less from its cultural lineage and more from a simple, cold, economic truth. Coffee alone cannot sustain a business, not at the prices people expect to pay, not with the rising costs of rent, wages, utilities, equipment maintenance, and the quiet drip of expenses that never stop flowing. And yet, coffee shops continue to appear, block after block, town after town, surviving on margins so thin they could vanish with a single bad season. The secret lies in how the experience is engineered. A customer walks in craving warmth. They glimpse pastries in glass cabinets illuminated just so, the light making them appear slightly more golden, slightly more irresistible than reality allows. The smell of roasted beans, carefully timed to greet newcomers, nudges them toward belief that this place exists to nourish, not to extract. But extraction is at its core. The extraction of flavor from beans, yes, but also the extraction of value from behavior. The truth is quiet and unglamorous. The largest profits usually come not from the coffee, but from everything surrounding it. The milk, the syrups, the pastries, the extra shots, the seasonal specials designed less for taste and more for margin. And even then, the money isn't simply in the products. It's in the atmosphere that convinces people to stay, to return, to bring others, to make the shop part of their routine. The real product is the ritual. Most customers don't consider how carefully that ritual is constructed. They don't notice the spacing between tables designed to make the shop look full but not cramped. They don't notice how the slow build of background noise makes them feel at ease, or how the chairs invite them to sit just long enough without overstaying. They don't notice the strategic placement of the ordering counter, forcing them to pass every profitable impulse item before they can request the thing they actually came for. Yet even these design decisions are just the surface. Underneath lies a more revealing current. Imagine the first cup of coffee purchased in a day. It costs perhaps 30 or 40 pence to produce. Beans, milk, water, electricity. It sells for 3 or more, a wonderful margin on paper. But that margin is immediately devoured by the realities of running a physical space. The rent that climbs each year, the staff wages that must be paid before a single cup is served, the taxes, the insurance, the slow bleed of overheads silently eroding every pound earned. That first coffee often doesn't make money at all, Neither does the second or the third. The break-even point arrives only after dozens of transactions, a threshold many small shops chase anxiously each day. This is why so many independents disappear within their first 2 years. They are caught between perception and truth. Customers see a bustling café with full tables and assume prosperity. But a full café doesn't guarantee profit, not when people linger for hours nursing a single drink, occupying space that could have been used by faster-turning customers, not when the price of prime real estate forces shops to rely on volume they rarely achieve, not when competition stands at every corner, identical in purpose and indistinguishable in aesthetic. Still, the allure persists, because a coffee shop is more than a business. It is a performance of belonging, a promise of community, creativity, or escape. And that promise is what customers pay for, far more than the liquid in their cup. The psychology behind this exchange is subtle. People are willing to pay a premium when something feels personal, comforting, or aspirational. Coffee shops understand this deeply. It's why menus are written with care, why machines gleam like instruments of craftsmanship, why the hum of conversation blends with curated playlists designed to evoke calm, focus, or nostalgia. Everything contributes to the invisible value, the value that justifies a price far beyond the cost of beans and milk. But something else hides behind the counter, something even more revealing about how coffee shops survive. The economic shift depending on the locality, the clientele, the rhythm of the surrounding streets. Some shops rely on morning commuters, others on lunchtime professionals, others still on students seeking a place to carve out hours of productivity. Each pattern shapes the strategy, each demographic changes the menu, the seating arrangement, even the power outlets along the walls. It is here, in these quiet adaptations, that the real story begins to unfold. Because the secret economics of coffee shops aren't just about selling drinks, they're about understanding human behavior at an almost intimate level. They survive not by pushing products, but by shaping habits, by becoming part of someone's morning ritual, their study routine, their creative sanctuary, their safe harbor on a cold afternoon. And as the morning deepens and the steady flow of customers begins to fill the space, the careful machinery of this world shifts into motion. Coins drop, cards tap, steam hisses. But beneath the surface of each exchange lingers the truth. What is being sold is not coffee, but the feeling that life, for a brief moment, is allowed to slow down. And the deeper economics, the strategies, the pressures, the unspoken realities, wait just beneath this comfort, ready to reveal themselves as the day unfolds. By late morning, the coffee shop has settled into its rhythm, a kind of heartbeat that pulses quietly beneath the chatter of customers and the constant hum of grinders. It is during these hours, when the rush has passed but the day is still young, that the hidden economics become sharper, more exposed. The early chaos masks the truth. The mid-morning calm reveals it. Because now, in this softer lull, every detail matters. A half-empty shop is a dangerous thing. Empty seats are not just empty, they are losses, silent and accumulating. Each unused chair is a missed transaction, each quiet minute a subtle erosion of the day's margin. Rent does not pause when customers do. Electricity does not dim itself. Wages do not shrink to match the pace of orders. The economics of a coffee shop are a relentless clock measuring not hours, but opportunities gained or wasted. And so, the game becomes about increasing the value of each person who walks through the door. The coffee itself remains the lure, the anchor, the simplest expression of the shop's identity. But the real profits, the ones that keep the lights on, lie in what surrounds that coffee. A latte may cost pennies to make, but the oat milk upgrade, the extra shot, the flavored syrup that catches the customer's eye at the last moment, those are the quiet victories. They blur the line between want and habit, between indulgence and routine. They transform a $2.80 drink into a $4.50 transaction without changing the barista's workload. But even this is not enough. The pastries resting beneath their glass display are more than decoration. They carry some of the highest profit margins in the entire shop. A croissant, purchased frozen for pennies, warmed into flakiness, and sold for a few pounds, represents a kind of small-scale alchemy. The same is true for cookies, banana breads, muffins, and the endless variations of baked comfort. They require no labor beyond thawing and heating, no skill beyond placement and timing. They are the quiet backbone of survival. Yet even here the story deepens. Because coffee shops understand something more subtle than simple add-ons or high-margin pastries, they understand desire. A customer stepping into a café isn't just hungry or tired, they're seeking comfort, identity, ritual, belonging. And these desires can be shaped, they can be guided, they can be transformed into revenue. It's why menus are designed the way they are, placing profitable options at eye level while leaving cheaper alternatives tucked below. It's why seasonal drinks appear in bursts of color and nostalgia, framed as limited-time offerings that whisper urgency. It's why the barista asks a carefully crafted question, "Would you like to make that a large?" knowing that most people, without thinking, will nod. Not because they want more coffee, but because they've been gently led toward the decision. But beneath these psychological nudges lies a more fragile economic truth. Many coffee shops do not survive on beverages or pastries at all. They survive on rent negotiation, supplier contracts, and the delicate balancing act of labor scheduling. A single miscalculation, ordering too much stock that expires, scheduling too many staff during a slow period, setting prices too low out of fear, can tip the scales entirely. Profit margins live in single digits. A 10% profit is considered a triumph. A 5% margin can support a business. Anything below that becomes a slow-motion collapse. And yet, customers rarely see this fragility. They see a warm space filled with aesthetic touches and the comforting illusion of abundance. The wooden shelves displaying artisanal beans, the polished espresso machine gleaming like a piece of industrial sculpture, the chalkboard menu with carefully imperfect handwriting. These small theatrical elements create the sense that the shop is thriving, even when the numbers behind the scenes tell a more precarious story. For independent shops, the struggle is sharper. Franchises and chains benefit from scale, the power to buy beans cheaper, negotiate rent lower, and streamline every aspect of operation. They thrive through consistency and efficiency, not ambiance. But independents rely on something more elusive, the emotional connection with their community. And that connection must be nurtured, maintained, sometimes even manufactured. As the clock nears noon, a man sits by the window, settling in with a single Americano that he will stretch across 3 hours of laptop work. He is not unusual. In fact, he is part of a modern phenomenon that quietly reshaped the economics of coffee shops worldwide. Coffee shops became offices for freelancers, remote workers, students, dreamers, each seeking a place where the hum of human presence replaces the silence of solitude. But this shift created a silent tension. A person occupying a table for an entire afternoon can cost more than they spend, not in the explicit sense, but in the opportunity cost of lost transactions. One seat taken is one seat unavailable for someone else. And in a business where space is revenue, the value of each seat is measured not in comfort, but in turnover. Some shops embraced this new reality, adding communal tables, power outlets, and Wi-Fi strong enough to support a dozen video calls simultaneously. They leaned into the workspace identity, selling not coffee but time and environment. Others resisted, dimming outlets, imposing laptop-free zones, or subtly discouraging long stays. Each shop crafted its own relationship with this new era of slow, space-consuming customers. Still, even this adaptation is not the heart of the story. The heart lies deeper in the numbers that shape every decision long before customers arrive. Take rent. In many cities, rent is the true product being sold, not coffee. A coffee shop sits on land it does not own, paying monthly tribute to landlords who operate on margins much fatter than those of the shops themselves. The rent is due whether 5 customers arrive or 500. Every price on the menu, every pastry in the display case exists because of rent. Utilities become another uninvited partner. Espresso machines pull more electricity than some households. Milk fridges hum day and night. Dishwashers churn constantly, breathing steam into the back room. And then there's the cost of waste. Milk expired, pastries unsold, beans staling faster than they can be brewed. By noon, the shop appears peaceful, even profitable. But beneath the surface, the margins are tightening, calculations shifting, small decisions tipping the day either toward survival or loss. And as lunchtime crowds begin to gather outside, something else approaches, a turning point, a shift in rhythm, an economic truth that few customers ever notice, but that every coffee shop feels deeply. For in the afternoon hours, a coffee shop changes its identity, and this transformation reveals even more of the hidden machinery keeping it alive. By the time afternoon drifts in, the light inside the coffee shop has changed. It grows softer, slipping across tabletops in slow-moving ribbons, turning cups and saucers into little sculptures of shadow and warmth. But it is not just the light that changes. The purpose of the shop shifts too, almost imperceptibly, as if the building itself exhales and prepares for a new role. The morning belonged to routine, commuters, early risers, the structured rhythm of people passing through on their way to somewhere else. But the afternoon belongs to lingerers, wanderers, people who come not for caffeine, but for refuge. These customers change everything about how the shop operates, and their presence deepens the strange, subtle economics that define the business. By now, the staff know the pattern well. The lunch hour brings a brief second wave, a rush of paninis, wraps, and iced drinks that momentarily transforms the bar area into a blur of movement. But it is what comes after, in the quiet stretch from 2 to 5, that matters most to the survival of the café. These are the hours that test the business, hours that stretch long and thin, where profits hinge not on volume, but on strategy, adaptability, and the quiet art of prolonging desire. Because in the afternoon, customers slow down and so does spending. A person who buys a single drink and occupies a table for hours becomes a fixture in the space, contributing little to the revenue, but shaping the atmosphere. And atmosphere, though it cannot be brewed or baked, holds an unspoken currency. When enough people linger, the shop looks alive, inviting, warm. Passers-by see bodies in seats and assume comfort worth joining. A half-full cafe in the afternoon signals welcome, an empty one signals caution. So even the long-stayers, the laptop nomads, the quiet readers, lost in their novels, become part of the economic equation, not through what they spend, but through what their presence suggests to others. Their silhouettes by the window act as advertising more powerful than signs or slogans. Their stillness generates its own kind of traffic. But this dynamic is fragile. Too many lingerers and the shop suffocates under the weight of unused potential. Too few, and it feels abandoned. The balance between presence and profit becomes a kind of choreography, one that owners learn through trial, error, and instinct rather than textbooks. It is here, in these slow hours, that coffee shops unveil one of their most misunderstood truths. The menu is not designed to express culinary creativity, it is designed to manage human behavior. Items exist not merely to be ordered, but to shape the flow of customers through the space. Cold drinks, for example, take longer to consume, they occupy time, they encourage lingering. High-margin pastries, meanwhile, encourage impulse. Seasonal items generate excitement where none exists, and the humble filter coffee, cheap, quick, simple, is often priced deliberately low, acting as a gateway to get customers through the door. Because once a customer steps inside, the economics shift dramatically. Presence creates possibility. A person who comes for a 250 filter coffee might end up buying a 320 cookie. Someone who planned to stay 15 minutes might stay an hour if the space feels inviting. And in that hour, they may spend more. The sensory environment, warm lighting, subtle background music, the smell of toasted sugar or fresh grounds, works on the subconscious like a gentle tide. And yet, beneath all this softness lies the harsh reality of cost. The afternoon hours are expensive in a way that customers never see. Staff must be paid even when orders are slow, machines must be cleaned, beans must be ground fresh, pastries must be rotated to avoid waste. Milk is opened, used, opened again, always in a cycle that must be perfectly timed to avoid spoilage. These quiet, lull hours drain resources invisibly. This is why some shops begin to close early. It's not the absence of customers, they might still be sitting there with their laptops glowing, but the absence of profitable transactions. A cafe that stays open until 7 might earn more prestige, more presence, more habitual visitors, but it bleeds money in the process. A cafe that closes at 4 might lose the evening foot traffic, but preserve enough margin to survive another month. The decision is never simple. It reflects the delicate balancing act behind the scenes, a blend of psychology, economics, and the owner's capacity for risk. Yet even as the afternoon lingers, a different kind of transaction unfolds, one that isn't measured in pounds or pence, but in perception. Coffee shops are storytellers. They craft identities that draw people in, not because of the coffee, which customers can brew at home, but because of the feeling of being seen or unseen in just the right way. For the student hunched over her notes, the shop becomes a sanctuary of productivity. For the older man reading the newspaper with the slow deliberateness of habit, it becomes a place where time softens. For the young couple sharing a cake, it becomes a moment of gentle intimacy. For the remote worker, it becomes an office unburdened by walls. Each of these roles brings different economic implications. Some people buy little but stay long, others order multiple drinks as they work. Some leave early but return daily, others appear once a week but always bring a friend. The value of a customer cannot be measured by a single visit. It is measured across months, across habits, across subtle emotional bonds, and coffee shops know this. This is why loyalty cards exist, not because customers truly need encouragement to return, but because it gives structure to the illusion of reward. A free 10th drink does not cost the shop much, but it creates the feeling of progress, of investment, of belonging. It transforms casual visits into rituals, rituals into revenue. And beneath all these human patterns lies the bedrock of the afternoon economy. Labor. Baristas are the lifeblood of the business, but their cost is constant, not flexible. A skilled barista can create velvety microfoam, calibrate espresso shots with precision, manage queues, charm customers, and maintain quality even during chaos. But they also represent the shop's largest expense after rent. The difference between profit and loss often lies in staffing one person instead of 2, shaving an hour from a shift, adjusting schedules based on instinct rather than numbers. Afternoon shifts are trimmed ruthlessly. A single barista may run the shop alone, juggling orders and dishes, because every saved wage is a step closer to breaking even. The customer sees ease, the owner sees survival. But despite this complexity, something else unfolds in these hours, something quieter, more profound. The coffee shop reveals its second identity. A curated stage where people perform subtle versions of themselves. The decor, the lighting, the hum of conversation. These elements are not accidental. They shape behavior, mood, spending habits. Customers choose their seats based on who they want to be in that moment, and each choice feeds back into the economics of the space. As the afternoon begins its slow descent toward evening, the shadows lengthen, the playlists soften, and the coffee shop finds itself at a crossroads. It has survived the morning rush, navigated the afternoon lull, balanced presence with profit. But now comes the hour that decides everything, the transition into evening, when the shop must decide what it truly is. And whether it survives the night depends on a truth even deeper than the margins on coffee or pastries. It depends on how well it understands the value of time itself. As the day stretches into its late hours, something subtle ripples through the coffee shop, an unspoken shift in purpose, tempo, and tension. The afternoon quiet dissolves, leaving behind a space suspended between identities. The evening is approaching, and with it arrives the moment of truth for the business. It is the time when a coffee shop must choose what it wants to become, or what it can afford to be. The light outside grows dimmer, softening the reflections in the windows until they become mirrors of the interior. Customers see themselves now, framed by the warm glow within, and something about this twilight hour makes the café feel deeper, more intimate, almost cinematic. This is when the coffee shop begins to question its own nature. Is it a place of slow comfort, or a machine built for turnover? A sanctuary or a business fighting to survive until tomorrow's sunrise? The economics of the evening are different from anything that came before. By this time, the morning profits have long been absorbed by rent, wages, inventory, and waste. The lunch hour surge has calmed, leaving behind a few lingering customers, people who sip slowly, who savor rather than consume, who fill the room with presence but not revenue. These are the hours where the shop balances on a razor's edge, where one good hour can rescue an entire day, and one slow hour can erode a week's progress. For many coffee shops, the evening is where ambition meets reality. Closing early is safer. It protects the shop from labor costs, from wasted pastries, from electricity burning in half-empty rooms. But staying open, staying hopeful, can unlock a second wave of profitability, especially in places where evenings belong to students, creatives, or wanderers seeking warmth. The decision is never made lightly. It is shaped by the rhythm of the neighborhood, by the type of customers who walk past as the sun sinks behind rooftops. In some cities, the evening belongs to the chains, whose bright lights promise consistency long after independents close their doors. In others, the evening belongs to the small shops that reinvent themselves after dark, shifting from coffee to atmosphere. They dim their lights, raise the music slightly, and welcome a crowd not looking for caffeine, but for calm companionship. Here, coffee shops reveal one of their most surprising functions. They become social refugees. For the young man who enters just after 6, the café is a place between home and the world, a space where he can breathe without performing. He orders a simple cappuccino, not because he wants it, but because buying something gives him a reason to stay. For the couple sharing a slice of cake, the shop becomes a soft-lit theater where they can exist side by side without the intensity of conversation. For the woman reading a thick novel in the corner, this place is a pocket of solitude carved out from the city's noise. None of them spend much, but all of them give the shop something crucial, a sense of life, and life attracts life. The illusion of vibrancy, of human warmth, is a currency as real as money. It draws people in from the street, guides them toward the counter, encourages them to indulge. A full shop feels trustworthy. A lively shop feels successful. People want to buy from places that seem loved, and evening customers, even the ones who linger for hours, become part of that illusion. But the economic tension at this hour tightens further. Every drink sold after 5 o'clock holds more weight than those sold before it. Each pastry purchased in the late hours represents saved profit, prevented waste. But every minute the shop remains open costs something. Wages ticking upward, electricity humming, fridges cycling on and off, machines warming idle. This is where owners feel the pressure most intensely. If they close early, they lose potential revenue. If they stay open, they risk burning through the day's remaining margin. It is a delicate equation, one that rarely resolves cleanly. And yet hidden behind this fragile arithmetic is a deeper truth about how coffee shops survive. Evening hours are less about immediate profit and more about identity. A café that stays open late sends a different message to its community. It becomes a second home for the lonely, a meeting place for the thoughtful, a quiet alternative to the noise of bars. It becomes part of the emotional fabric of the neighborhood. This intangible goodwill returns in the mornings, in the weekends, in the word-of-mouth loyalty that cannot be purchased. But loyalty alone cannot pay bills. So coffee shops rely on something subtle, nearly invisible, the slow transformation of evenings into rituals that extend beyond the daily cup. Some shops introduce small events, not to make money, but to create memory. Poetry readings, acoustic musicians, chess nights, book clubs. Attendance may be sparse, revenue may be unimpressive, but the emotional impact, the sense of belonging, threads itself into the hearts of those who participate. And people return to the places that saw them, that allowed them to exist in softer ways than the world outside demanded. But even in this tenderness, the economics sharpen again. By this hour, milk usage must be monitored carefully. Each carton opened must be justified, because whatever remains at closing is often wasted. Pastries are discounted not to increase profit, but to recover losses. Beans must be rationed to ensure tomorrow's supply remains fresh. The barista wipes down the machine between orders, preserving the equipment that is more valuable than the espresso it produces. Everything becomes a negotiation with the future, and the staff feel it too. Evening shifts attract a different kind of barista, one who can hold silence gracefully, who can move comfortably in slower rhythms, who can read the needs of customers who are not in a rush. They become not just service workers, but guardians of an atmosphere that must be maintained without slipping into indifference. There is a quiet responsibility in that. For when the clock passes 7 and the outside world darkens fully, the coffee shop reaches its most vulnerable but most beautiful state. The noise of the day fades, the pace slows to a heartbeat. Customers huddle into the dimness, protected by the soft amber glow. And the shop, for a brief moment, becomes almost spiritual, a place where strangers share space without obligation. But beauty does not pay rent, and soon the shop must decide, hold the doors open a little longer, or begin the slow ritual of closing. Whichever choice is made, the economics of the coffee shop, both seen and unseen, will ripple through that decision, for the cost of staying open another hour is rarely equal to the revenue gained. But closing too early risks disappointing regulars, disrupting habits, eroding the identity the shop has built so carefully. This is the paradox of the evening. It is not about money alone, it is about meaning, and how much a business is willing to sacrifice in pursuit of both. And as the final customers begin to gather their things, unaware of the delicate calculations unfolding behind the counter, the shop prepares for the quietest moment of the day. When the doors lock, the lights dim, and the true cost of running this place reveals itself at last. When the last customer finally steps out into the night and the door sighs shut behind them, a different kind of silence settles over the coffee shop, one without warmth, without conversation, without the gentle distraction of human presence. It is a silence of reckoning. A silence that belongs not to the customers but to the business itself, to the people who see the cafe not as an escape but as a set of numbers that must align, or else nothing survives. Closing time is when the facade of ease dissolves. The lights remain on, but their glow feels harsher now. Chairs are lifted onto tables, counters are wiped clean of the small gestures that shape the day. Coffee splashes, crumbs from pastries, the faint outline of a teacup left behind. The espresso machine exhales a final burst of steam, as if releasing the strain of everything it carried since dawn. The shop becomes a stage after the audience has left, props still warm from the performance. This is when the real work begins. The barista, of whom customers often ask nothing more than a smile and a perfect pour, now becomes a caretaker of the business's fragile skeleton. They empty the portafilters, backflush the machine, scrub the milk wand until no trace of the day remains. They count the pastries left unsold, each one a quiet loss. They check the bins of beans, feeling the weight with experienced hands, calculating whether tomorrow's morning rush will require a new delivery. They sweep the floor slowly, gathering not just dirt, but the remnants of human presence. In these moments, the coffee shop reveals its true nature, not a cozy refuge, but a creature of delicate margins held together by repetition, discipline, and hope. The owner, if they are present, sits somewhere in the back, their face illuminated by the faint glow of a laptop screen. They are reviewing numbers no customer ever sees. The total number of transactions, the average spend per person, the ratio of drinks to food, the cost of milk used today, the amount of waste, the wages owed, the looming rent, the electricity bill waiting to be paid, the card payment fees that nibble at every sale. Here lies the secret that so few understand. Coffee shops rarely make money from selling coffee. They make money from managing everything around it. Profit is not found in the foam of a latte, but in the unglamorous arithmetic of survival. It is found in reducing waste without reducing quality, in scheduling the exact number of staff needed, not more, never more, in raising prices just enough to offset inflation, but not enough to frighten regulars, in negotiating rent every few years with a landlord who holds more power than any customer ever will. It is a world where a 3% change in milk prices can reshape the menu, where a broken grinder can destroy a week's margin, where a single snowstorm keeping customers indoors can unravel a month's progress. But despite this fragility, something keeps coffee shops alive, something stubborn and emotional and entirely unprofitable on paper. It is the belief that cafes are more than businesses, that they are places where human beings can breathe. And this belief, intangible as it is, becomes the invisible revenue stream that accountants cannot measure, but owners rely on all the same. Because for every customer who buys a single drink, there might be another who returns daily for years. For every slow afternoon, there might be a weekend morning that carries the entire week. For every cost that rises, there might be a new product, a new ritual, a new habit that customers embrace without hesitation. Ritual. This is where the economics become human. People do not visit coffee shops for caffeine alone. If they wanted caffeine, they could brew it at home. They come for the rhythm, for the break in routine, for the sense that in this small, warm space, the world feels slightly more manageable. They come for the gentle illusion of productivity, or the comfort of anonymity, or the quiet joy of watching the world from a window seat. And coffee shops survive not by exploiting this, but by honoring it. Prices are set not only based on cost, but on perceived value. An oat milk flat white is not £3.80 because oats are expensive. It is £3.80 because the customer who orders it is not buying oats. They are buying identity, habit, comfort. They are buying the feeling of being part of something, even if only for the time it takes to sip. The shop sells atmosphere disguised as flavor, belonging disguised as routine, time disguised as beverage, and in the quiet of closing, this truth becomes almost poetic. The barista finishes their tasks, the sinks drain, the machines cool, the last bag of rubbish is tied and lifted away. The lights begin to dim, one switch at a time. The space that felt alive only an hour ago now looks strangely bare, its warmth artificial without the people who animated it. But before leaving, the barista pauses by the front window. Out on the street, the shop's reflection glows faintly against the darkness, the tables neatly arranged, the counter spotless, the soft promise of morning lingering in the stillness. For a moment, it looks like a place waiting, not for customers, but for purpose. Because tomorrow the lights will rise again, the grinders will sing their gritty notes. The first customer will step through the door carrying a hope for comfort that they may not even realize they're searching for, and the shop will perform the same dance, quietly and faithfully, stitching itself into the fabric of another day. That is the real secret of how coffee shops make money. Not through the narrow margin of beans and milk, nor through the pastries marked up from pennies to pounds, nor through the long hours and careful choices, but through the daily, gentle exchange of human need for human hospitality, through the creation of a space where people can exist softly, briefly, away from the demands of their own lives. They make money by selling moments. Moments of pause, moments of connection, moments of solitude wrapped in warmth, moments that mean nothing and everything at once, and these moments, for all their fragility, are priceless enough that people return again and again, supporting a business model that should not work, but somehow does, held together by hope, habit, and the unspoken truth that life feels a little more bearable with a warm cup in hand. As the final light clicks off and the door locks with a small metallic sigh, the shop disappears into the night, carrying with it the delicate balance of today's survival and tomorrow's possibility. The economics remain hidden. The struggle remains unseen. But the story continues, quietly, patiently, one cup at a time,